I think we should get things started. We've got a lot of content to go through today. And so I'll be your host for today. My name is Mark Whiteley. I'll walk you quickly through a couple of the housekeeping rules that we have as we go into this discussion. And so today we're going to be running a session between Red Flag Alert, Xebia, and Databricks. We will send the recording of this presentation out to everyone about a week after this webinar has concluded. We will have about 30 minutes of content from Vincent, about 20 minutes of content from Tomasz, and then we'll have 5 minutes at the end for any Q&A. Any questions that we don't get to through this session, we'll follow up with you on email afterwards, and you'll be getting a survey from Xebia afterwards also, just asking you about your experience during the session as well. So without further ado, a few quick introductions here. So joined first of all by Tomasz, who is from Xebia. Xebia is one of Databricks' primary partners that we utilize over in EMEA and around the rest of the world. Tomasz worked as a solution architect and a consultant with Vincent through the work in Red Flag Alerts migration. And we're also joined by Vincent. Vincent has a history of leading technology and product change initiatives at global financial services companies. And he's now Chief Technology and Product Officer at Red Flag Alert. Red Flag Alert being driving to be a leading dynamic real-time credit reference agency. Vincent and Tomasz can go through introductions for themselves in a second, but hopefully that serves you well for a bit of a tee up. And we're really excited to talk about how Red Flag Alert have moved into Databricks within 8 weeks with the help of Xebia. So without further ado, I think Vincent, it's over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll wait for Tomasz to surrender his screen, and then I shall start presenting on my side. So, all going well. Without further ado, we will transition on. Okay, so firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today, particularly Mark and Tomasz, because they were very much part of this journey. Now, this opening slide, I think it's really important that I draw your attention to the phrase, which is a business decision, because it very much was a business decision. And I'll take you through why that actually came through. But firstly, I'd like to introduce myself and who we are as Red Flag. So my name is Vincent Kilcoyne. I've worked for probably more years or perhaps decades than we care to mention. And I've worked with financial institutions pretty much all over the world, driving and leading change programs. And with that in mind, I have the role of Chief Technology and Product Officer within Red Flag Alert. Now, who are Red Flag Alert? So we are an organization that specializes in providing real-time dynamic credit reference information, credit scoring information, and also ID verification and AML solutions on a SaaS basis, which is pure cloud native. We are a 100% pure data company, and our origins lie very much in the advanced use of data to help organizations drive decision-making around credit decisioning, AML, ID verification, and really stuff that is pivotal and critical to the ongoing operations of a very diverse client base, covering approximately 800 clients in sectors such as accounting, legal, finance, construction, etc. So from that perspective, we support in the region of around about 10,000 users on a daily basis, covering all of those sectors. And really, it's absolutely critical and pivotal that you realize that our core DNA is data and being able to provide optics to a very diverse audience in that. So why did we choose to move forward, and what is driving it? So we're very much on a growth trajectory, which is the commitment that I have given to the board. And our core goal is to be the leading dynamic real-time credit reference agency, to be able to provide access to all of our functionality in a cloud native environment with real-time APIs, So fundamental to that is the technology that we use to deliver that to our customers, right? Not only from the point of usability, but also from the point of view of architecture, API, and connectivity. But we're also driving the uptake and the ingestion of a variety of data sets to increase the functionality and the quality of the data. And also as part of that journey is to provide all of our users with an unparalleled experience in terms of data access, data availability, and analytical capability. So this is very much part of the DNA and part of where we're driving the business. Now, why and what drove the decision? So when I joined the organization a number of months ago, back in 2024, one of the things that I immediately found was we were using Fabric, and we were one of the very early uptake and clients of and users of Fabric. And part of that, I guess, when you are an early taker of technology, you can sometimes make some interesting decisions where you have to live with it. But then equally, you can live with the consequences and have to deal with the consequences of really being part of an early cohort of users in a technology that's still evolving. We unfortunately had the consequences of having to deal with support, which presented us with some challenges. But for me, the single biggest alert and warning that I had was my interruptions to my BAU, my business as usual. And I've got a very strong technology organization, which comprises my data science team, my data engineering team, and my development team. And my data engineering team, which is pivotal and critical to the ongoing success of the business, was on occasion spending 60% of their time addressing Fabric issues. And in some cases, I was finding out about data being missing, not from my internal controls, because they were limited by virtue of us using Fabric, but we were actually finding out from our customers, which is really not where you want to be. Okay, you do not want to be responding and reacting to telephone calls and support calls. And this was really very much part of the ethos within the business, which is we want to be the best. We want to be absolutely on top of our game. We want to understand everything about our business, everything about our data, and we want to be in front of our customers. We do not want to be finding out about issues in our platform from our customers. So I wasn't able to deliver that to the board. I wasn't able to deliver that to anybody across the business. And that was really pivotal to one of the decisions. Also, I wanted to make sure that our technology was able to deliver the business strategy. And I wanted to have the confidence in our ability to execute. So that was very much driving the assessment that I undertook from our underlying Fabric architecture. And at one stage, we engaged Xebia to carry out very much a business critical review of some of the elements and all of the architecture around our availability to make sure that we were positioning our business optimally to deliver the growth goals, which comprised, as you can appreciate, of global expansion and not to be serving just 800 users or 800 organizations, but to be serving 8,000 and beyond. And this was very much when we had the realization that we needed to address some of the issues and some of the challenges to my BAU and to my technology and to my support. So hence the very critical decisions to be able to move forward. So what were the options? Well, I could hope for Fabric to get better. I don't like hope as a strategy. It has never worked for me. I don't think it works for many. And then I had the hard conversations. Do I go back from Fabric to Synapse? And then hope that we would have a migration strategy when Fabric would be ready to support us and our ever-growing data estate and our ever-growing user estate. That filled me with a certain number of concerns because I don't like going back to hope that the future will be better. And to really buy into a migration back to Synapse to then plan for a future migration to Fabric if and when it was ready. So that was questionable. The next part was to go forward and embrace other more appropriate technologies such as Databricks and or Snowflake, etc. And they were very, very pivotal and critical decisions and critical evaluations. And then the other options that we had to look at was, do we do it ourselves or do we find somebody to help us through that? Bearing in mind that we had a lot of experience of Fabric, but we had little or no experience of a new end state architecture, be that Databricks or Snowflake or whatever. All right. So based on the experience of being one of the early adopters of Fabric, the general experience was that really, if we start embarking on taking on a new technology, do we look at the risk assessment of some of the decisions we may make as part of our lack of experience in Databricks? And then what are the consequences of living with some of the design decisions we may take based on lack of experience? And what would they do and how would they land 1, 2, 3 years down the road? So there were a lot of decisions that had to be made. And when we go forward, I think that this pretty much sums up a huge amount of the ethos around what I wanted us to be able to achieve. And I look at Edward Deming very, very intentionally, which is, it is not enough to do your best. You must know what to do and then do your best. So that very much drove the ethos and the approach that we engaged on, which is to make sure that our team, our data engineering, our development, our data science team knew what was the best way to go forward. And we actually upskilled them. We educated them in what we could do, what we could achieve, and then we embarked on the project. So how did we run the project? Well, firstly, we engaged Xebia because we knew that they had the expertise not only in our target end state architecture, but actually in our as was architecture, or as was at that point in time, which was Fabric. So we knew that they would be able to help us migrate from a technology that they were familiar with, Fabric, to another technology that they were extremely advanced in and had huge expertise and experience in, which was Databricks. So as part of that, we had a very aggressive time frame. And Xebia knew that we had this. Some would say it was not achievable, all right. But I liked that approach because Xebia and ourselves said, let's do it. We set an aggressive time frame. That time frame consisted of an initial 2-week project where we threw Tomasz at the problem to give us a reassurance that we knew what needed to be achieved. We and Xebia knew the size of the project, the size of the challenge. We also knew what skills would need to be available, and the size of the team, which Tomasz can talk about. And it also provided us with a reassurance that the project was deliverable, not only in terms of time, but also in terms of cost. All right. So that was a very big, important, wise step. And bear in mind that I've run and been part of change projects with financial services organizations all over the world. This is probably one of the best decisions. This 2-week study was probably one of the best decisions, not only operationally, but also financially and educationally and emotionally, because it meant that we all bought into the project timeframes from a delivery perspective. And then we started the project, and this was very, very pivotal to the ongoing success. We had daily stand-ups where we had very clear allocation of roles and responsibilities. We had rich dialogue and extremely fast decision-making, right? So this really made it possible for us all to buy into what had to be done or what needed to be done. We had frequent internal calls and internal reviews of exactly what was being done. on both sides so that we all knew when any roadblocks were being identified, that they were addressed extremely quickly. We also had senior stakeholder calls on a weekly basis, and we had very strict oversight and accountability. We had a very strong delivery manager from within Xebia, and I gave that person complete remit to call everybody and anybody out, including me and my team, to ensure that we delivered. So I think that it was really important that we achieved that. So when we actually migrated and started that project and came to the very end, what in reality does the new future look like? And I'm kind of smiling at the point on the very far left, because it is very annoying, but it's also very reassuring. And why is that? Because I get messages right from the source of our data ingestion. I think my first message comes in at 6:30 in the morning, and I find out before I even have my first cup of coffee whether there's anything I need to know about, I need to worry about. And initially, those messages were, I was finding out that there were problems in data that we didn't even know about. So from a reassurance perspective and annoyance perspective, I have complete line of sight on every data source, every issue that is involved in ingesting our data on a daily basis. So by 9 a.m., I'm in control. I know that my data engineering team and my Databricks environment is in control. I don't find out about it from my customers. I'm able to alert every single member of my SLT if there's an issue and that we are on it. So this for me is an annoying level of control, but I am relaxed about it. But the annoyance was that I'm finding out about things that we didn't know about. And that's, I think, is a very important part. My data science team and my data engineering team and my developers are incredibly enthused by the new end state environment because they know that our environment is stable. I've not had one outage in the time since we've gone live. I've not lost 60% of my data engineering team. We have stability in our environment. We are enjoying, from a data science perspective, playing with the data and building analytical models and building business intelligence dashboards and looking forward to engaging with the new technologies and the new approaches and the innovative and disruptive things that we can do with data, because we can now do them without causing interruption. There's a newfound confidence in the team because we're not having our interruptions. I'm not losing 60% of my data engineering effort, which means I do not disrupt my roadmap. And this was critical. I was encountering interruptions to my roadmap because of my instability in my underlying data engineering. And that proved material. So now there's a real confidence around us being able to deliver, right? And there's a huge optimism around being able to bring innovative approaches, disruptive techniques, and there's a real kind of curiosity and a sense of can-do around what we can do and how we take that forward. So that's something that I'm really, really proud that we've achieved. When you look at any major change project, I think it's really important that you can show to your senior leadership team, your investors, and your senior management right across the organization what you have delivered and what the impact and what the consequences, the benefits of that are. So fundamentally, step number one, the key benefit was that we were able to deliver a huge change project in an incredibly short period of time, on budget and on time. And what that has meant from me and for the technology organization is that the SLT, senior leadership team, the board, the investors, and everybody right across the organization now see us as being part of the growth of the organization and enabling and delivering against that. So that's something that we're really, really proud of. We're all absolutely delighted that we're not encountering any outages. So I've got 60% of my time back for my data engineering team. And that's an incredible enabler of change. And it also means that I can now start to aggressively and enthusiastically ingest and onboard new data sources. They're starting to realize, and everybody is starting to realize what we achieved by virtue of the fact that they're hearing, oh my God, you've achieved a migration from Fabric to Databricks in how long? So they're actually finding out in the industry. So we're very proud of that. Of course, they're not going to clap me on the back and say, well done. All right. I would be delusional to think that happened, but we're all very proud of what has been achieved. And our board and advisors and the industry and clients, indeed, are actually starting to realize what that means to them. All right. And what that does mean is that they are supportive of new projects because we've taken the volatility and the instability out of our operations. So we can now start to innovate and we can actually start to deliver against dates and times. So what are the lessons learned? And this is really important. And some of this is tongue in cheek. All right. So new technologies are a double-edged sword. Their full potential cannot be realized without suitable expertise. I go back to my Edward Deming quote. Right? I think it's very important that you start a journey understanding what the end state will be, how to get there. And Xebia, when they were part of this project, it wasn't only about moving the technology. It was very much a case of, well, where do you want to be? And how do they implement best practice? And the conversations were not always comfortable. When we were working with Tomasz and he was making advice and guidance, my head of engineering sometimes would pick up the phone and say, Vince, I would not have done it this way, but having discussed it with the Xebia team and Tomasz in particular, we're now choosing a better approach because we have got the advice and guidance from the team. So I would say that the lessons learned is don't always choose an organization that will agree with you completely and mindlessly. Work with an organization that will challenge you based on their understanding and your understanding and complete clarity and transparency around what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to take the business. All right. So I think it's really important that you actually have that clarity. The experience of new technologies invariably only comes after you've actually made a number of mistakes. So preferably you choose somebody that has been through those mistakes rather than you end up having to live with them. So I think that this is where Tomasz and the team really brought in their advice and guidance and helped us to achieve best practice. And one of the things is that techies love new stuff. What do I mean by that? Invariably, we lived with the consequences of that when we jumped into the Fabric world. Our techies loved it. They were very much learning new stuff and learning on the job, and we were living with the consequences of that. With the advice and guidance and the hand-holding and the challenging of Xebia, we've now embraced that new technology, but we've embraced it because we know what it's going to mean for our business. It's going to position us as the leading real-time dynamic credit reference agency with real-time access, and we've embraced this new technology to really springboard us forward. It's very important that you find somebody who really knows that new technology, all right, and that they have experience of the old stuff. Not that necessarily that the old stuff is particularly old, but that they have experience of where you were, all right? And that, as I said, that organization helps you align this new technology and your journey with the future goals of the business. Really, it's very important to be open and share. And as I said, when we engaged the delivery manager from Xebia, I gave that person complete remit to call everybody out. And they did. All right. I may not have liked some elements of it, but it was really important they did. All right. So I think that it's really important that you achieve that. And really, from my perspective, the summary of this whole concept, I don't know if some of you will be aware of who Redditor is. Redditor is and was one of the leading oil rig fire experts in the world. He was very expensive, but his success rate was incredible. So I think that his comment, which was, if you think it's expensive to hire a professional, wait till you see how expensive it is to hire an amateur, is more relevant than ever in this journey. People will question whether it's possible to achieve what we did. We did it only because we brought in a very good team who were able to question, challenge, advise, guide, and deliver. And that's not always going to be cheap, but it's probably going to be more expensive if you don't have that. And if you don't have the maturity and the honesty and the transparency to actually work together to deliver that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tomasz, because I think it's really important that he shares with you some of his experiences in the project.
Okay. Thank you, Vincent. Let me share back to my screen. Right. Thank you. Once again, thanks, Mark, for introducing. As it was told, Tomasz Kostyrka, data platform architect in Xebia. And I was the part of the team on the Xebia side that was responsible for the execution of the project. And I would like to share exactly the same story as Vincent, but from the slightly different point, and talk more about the technology part and about the things I think that made a difference and make this project possible in such a short time. But before I'll dive slightly deeper to those things that made it possible, I'd like to just, on a very high level, explain what it was the scope of work, because a migration might be understood differently, and there are lots of migration you can compare in the scope. So what was our challenge for those 8 weeks? The first part was building the platform. We had to build almost from scratch a robust, flexible, and scalable data platform built using Azure Databricks. One of the also things that was requested at the beginning is that everything is covered with CI/CD and fully automated and deployed from code. So we've skipped all possible manual configuration. Everything had to be automated, and that was done from the day one. I say both the infrastructure part and also the data engineering part, like notebooks, workflows, old access management, and basically everything that will happen later after we finish the project should also be done in that CI/CD regime. We were told to configure multiple environments. So from the beginning, we started working on a proper development environment, then moved to UAT, and then deploy stuff to production. So we didn't start just from one environment that was first developed on one and then modified to a production. We started properly as we should. Additionally, setup, logging, and monitoring. This is the one thing that Vincent stressed at the beginning, that some of the logs are missing. Not all the information is coming when the pipelines are failing. So that was a quite important requirement that after the delivery, we know what's happening on the new platform. Establishing some groundwork for testing and QA. And at the very end, when the platform is ready, also preparing a separate, isolated data science environment so that the team, a data engineering and data science team, can work in isolation and that we can prevent any potential conflicts with resource utilization. Building the data platform was just the first part. The second, when the platform was ready, was to migrate all the data engineering workloads from Fabric to Databricks. But what's important, it was not a simple lift and shift migration. The first thing is it's not possible to migrate stuff from no-code workloads to Databricks notebooks. So with besides of the migration, we had to simplify this slightly, refactor the processes, and after migrating the processes, also migrate all the historical data from the previous environment to the new one so that we keep all the history. I believe it was like 4 or 5 years of the history. Migration part, platform development, and one thing that was also extremely easy was to indicate approximate costs, compare them to what was spent previously, and also cover the training and handover so that the platform can be handed over to the red flag alert team, and they are not in any way, let's say, vendor locked with us, that they can maintain the platform and add new workloads by themselves. And now, before we'll go to technical details, on the first slide, I would like to also say a few words about what Vincent mentioned about the discovery phase, especially, and about the phases of the project. In most projects we suggest strongly to split the project in those, on a very high level, 3 phases: discovery, delivery, and hypercare. Sometimes it's called differently, but we know the purpose of those phases. And I've seen on many projects that people tend to skip the discovery phase because they believe that it's a potential saving. We can kickstart the project faster, we can save some time, save some money, and just start the development from day one. And I believe that this is really a false economy, and this project shown that those 6 or 7 days we spent, not even full mandates, because I was assigned at the beginning for, I believe, 30% for the discovery phase. This allowed us to build a proper backlog and then kickstart the project, and we really knew what has to be done during the next 2 months. And that was also crucial because in such a short projects like this one, where we have 2 months to execute something and the deadline is final, we don't have time to change our approach in the middle of the project. That there's no space for huge mistakes, and that was really important, and we all see this. Second important thing is the involvement of the solution architect from the beginning till the end. And what's important here, I believe it has to be the same one. Things that I've seen in some projects is that the solution architect, or the main lead developer that's responsible for the discovery phase, is then handing over his requirements and the backlog to someone else for the delivery. This also might be a huge interruption because the leader needs to hand over all the plans, all the estimations, and then this can really disrupt the project. We didn't start with the full development team from the day one, so that's like a consequence of the discovery phase where not everyone was involved. So first, proper planning, proper preparation of the environment, then onboarding the whole team. But on the other side, we've, from the day one, tried to engage people on the customer side. Because also one thing I really don't believe is a handover that's done at the end of the project. We've seen projects where after 5 or 6 months of development, there is a workshop plan for the last 2 or 3 days where the whole team on the customer side is trying to understand what was done and hand over. Personally, I don't believe in that, and I don't believe that you can hand over a few months of work in such a workshop. So one thing we've done here, and I think was really allowed us for the smooth handing over of the code, was the fact that the red flag alert team was involved from day one. And last thing, also already mentioned by Vincent, quick feedback loop, fast escalation, elimination of all unnecessary processes, how we sometimes call it the email ping pong. There was just no time from that. We've removed this. And for example, we didn't wait 4 or 5 weeks for the basic accesses like it sometimes happens. We just didn't have time for that. It didn't exist in the project. But now, let's jump maybe into more details. I'm not planning to do any deep dive. If anyone is interested about a deeper dive into technology than that, please just contact us after the webinar. But maybe on a high level, let's split the discovery and delivery phase in sub-phases. First one, cloud and DevOps. I've called it cloud maturity and DevOps culture. We all know that the data platform is not the only project that Red Flag Alert team has on their Azure tenant. We need to align with the rest. We need to align with the security guys, with the networking guys. We need to understand how the cloud is set up, what are the requirements related to networking, to security, how environments are isolated. And our data platform should align to the standards to not live in a, let's say, different world and cause issues with storages, not cause the issues when cloud and security teams start to support us with combining their workloads. We need to understand how the infrastructure is set up, what tools are used when we talk about infrastructure as code and deployment of the resources. And we also need to understand how the development workflow is set up. If we want to cover the whole process with a CI/CD pipeline, we need to decide which tools do we use, how do we use them, and also start doing this from the very beginning and teach people and onboard them to start using this correctly. In our case, what we used was Terraform, that was suggested for infrastructure as code, and also for some of the Databricks resources, like management of the Unity catalog, management of some of the clusters, and management of the Databricks account. And then inside of the Databricks, I've seen that this question was already in the Q&A. We've used Databricks asset bundles, which I believe are quite a game changer, because in different platforms, I haven't seen such a complete tool that allows us to create one project that really supports developers to deploy all the workloads so smoothly with CI/CD pipelines and so completely. Yes, because if someone works with that, we have both orchestration, scheduling, notebooks, potential DLT pipelines, etc. Everything is there as one project, and it really simplifies the management of it. That was agreed and set up before we even let the data engineers in and allow them to start migrating the data engineering. Next step, our data platform. Also something Vincent you've already mentioned. The first thing we need to remember is that the platform is just a tool. It's not a goal to have a Databricks or any other platform in the company. The goal is to use it and to understand why do we need it for. And that was analyzed during the discovery phase. And the platform was designed for what was needed currently and what's also for the potential growth and the new workloads that Red Flag is planning to onboard. Second bullet point, the thing that we've had to pick a mature tool that's proven and battle tested. I've put the second bullet point and the bolded text because I think that this is extremely important, and this is why we were happy that Databricks was chosen. Because from my perspective as an architect, when we start a project, there's one question I don't need to ask when I'm working with Databricks. For example, I don't want to say names, but some of the technologies, when we want to build a workload, we first need to check if it's possible to do it, and then we need to find out how to do it. Databricks is a major platform. Most, or if not all, of the functionalities we need is already there. And basically 99% of the cases, I can skip the part if it's possible, because I know it is possible. I just need to figure out how it's done. All the DevOps stuff, all the APIs, all the workflow scheduling, everything's just there. You just need to know how to do it. And that's give you the confidence as an architect that you will deliver the project and you won't have a surprise after 2 or 3 months that just the platform doesn't support what you need to deliver. Third thing related to the speed, accelerators wherever possible. This is a major solution. Lots of projects were already done. Lots of platforms were built. We don't need to reinvent the wheel each time on each project. We can prepare some accelerators, some pre-built modules, some scripts that allow us to just in days deploy stuff that at the first time required weeks. I don't want to say months, but at least weeks. So with proper accelerators, you can extremely speed up the process of building such a platform. Last things, why do we want to build the platform that way? Because we want to offload every security, networking, CI/CD deployment related parts from our data engineers. We want them to focus on the data engineering part. We want to onboard the data engineers and say that you have access to correct data, you have your compute power, you have deployment pipelines, please focus on the workloads. If you write the code properly, it will be promoted to production through all the environments correctly. You don't need to spend lots of your time on that part. That's the platform engineering part. Focus please on the data engineering. And also, if we start from building that platform, what's important, we start clean and we don't start with a huge technological debt. Also seen this on some of the project that people first start building a platform with those high admin privileges, running things on their personal credential because they think that someday we'll just fix it. No, like put up the correct regime on the development environment from the day one, and then you won't have this technical debt you need to solve before going to production, which might cause extremely lot of costs and problems and delays on your production go to production day. Okay, next thing, platform ready. Some key takeaways from the data engineering. So our migration part, the first thing, standardization. Whenever possible, standardize. If you have 5 ways to do similar things from no code through low code to code one, pick one and please stick to it, because you'll have multiple developers in your team. Some of them may go away, some of them may even have longer breaks. We want to standardize each workflow so that we know that we have backup in our team. We've picked quite a standardized way, and moving smoothly to the second bullet point, that allowed us to create some frameworks and reusable mechanisms. Because if you have multiple playing, there's also a huge chance that some of the code that's reused through them can be just standardized, reused, and built properly as libraries, scripts, or even some simple notebooks. In case of larger migration, check for migration accelerators. I know that Databricks, I think a few days or weeks ago, showed multiple accelerators or migration white papers, for example, for SQL Server. Please check. There's a huge chance that something is already standardized, that you can check how to do it, and you can also save your time and shorten the migration process. And last one, to confirm that the lakehouse approach is a nice one, and we've seen this on this project. On the previous solution, we had a complete historical raw data that was loaded from the system. So same way we're assuming the lakehouse architecture. And instead of migrating all the layers of data, silver table, bronze tables, and fighting with all the problems with even mapping columns, we just loaded the raw data and re-executed all the new workloads on Databricks from scratch. And that was the easiest, most secure way to reload the data, which also gave us the benefit that we knew that our new workflows are tested, because we've basically processed 4 years of data with those workflows before going to production, and that was quite a proof that it's just working. Okay, data engineering part, migration done. Let's move to the last step. So everything related to maintenance, orchestration, and monitoring, especially on the production environments. Here, Databricks workflows were used because they cover all the requirements we have. Orchestration and scheduling of our workflows, the retries in case of any failures of the downstream or upstream systems. We've tried to write an independent pipelines to make it simple to retry potential fail flows. Failure notifications also standardized through Databricks asset bundles. And of course, everything deployed through CI/CD with Databricks asset bundles, which really simplified the way. For those who don't know Databricks asset bundles, you can develop your workload as a YAML code, keep them in repository, reuse some of the code, automate the creation of the workloads, and then deploy them through Databricks asset bundles, which, as said before, simplifies your process and allows you to make it testable and allows it to easily migrate from dev through test to production systems. That covers the technical part. So from discovery phase till migration and setting up the maintenance pipeline. But the last thing I'd like to cover that was extremely important was the collaboration. Because also, in my opinion, if in the data world, in my opinion, most of the projects fail not because of the technology, but because of the lack of collaboration and the people that are not working together. What made this project a success was the collaboration from day one. We've worked as one team. We didn't have any separate calls that we've done on the Xebia side or RFA side. It was just one team working from day one with really short feedback cycle, with no formal emails, with no escalation that had to go through 5 or 6 stages. We just work quickly, and this is what made this a success. Also, this is what made our handover simple. I've put the handover as the last stage of this diagram, but that for me was just a formal handover when we went through the checklist and just ticked the boxes. The handover took place from the day one through the project, and we were involved together as one team. So just to sum this up from my perspective, what made this project a success? Well executed discovery phase. Please don't skip it. Teamwork and shared goals. Focus on this from the first day. The selection of the platform. Choose stable, mature tools and just build on top of it. You will save yourselves from those surprises you can have with things that are not properly battle tested by different companies. And find someone who's experienced in the technology. Reuse accelerators. Don't reinvent the wheel where something was done properly. That will speed up your process. That's the key takeaways from my side. And maybe to end up this, what's next? I believe that new sources, streaming and real time, as we've already talked about this with Vincent, probably lots of new data science, machine learning courses, because now we have the proper environment and we can start doing this. And the platform is ready for that. Just let people do the stuff. And to finish, because I was a little bit jealous because Vincent finished his slides with a cool quote, so I also wanted to add one. Maybe after those 45, 50 minutes now you think that was quite easy, simple, that the project was not challenging. I would say yes, it was quite easy because anything's easy when you just know how to do it. And this applies to everything. So that's my final.
Great.
And that's it. If anyone's interested in any deeper dive, you can contact us at Xebia or put the questions on the chat. We'll try to answer.
Amazing. Thanks, Tomasz and Vincent. We had a few great questions coming in during the session there. There's a question that's a little bit more technical and deep dive. So maybe, Tomasz, we can take that and answer that offline. But one question actually that I quite liked that just came up towards the end there, which was, have you had any surprises during the execution that you didn't capture during the discovery? And I guess it's a question both for Vincent and Tomasz.
Oh, right. So very briefly, yes. During the actual migration, we discovered 2 data sources that we hadn't encountered in part of the discovery. Simply because the documentation and there were no processes and it hadn't been revealed to Tomasz. The beauty of it was that we were actually able to take that task on within our own data engineering team and implement it with the help and advice and guidance from Tomasz and the oversight. So the answer was yes. The beauty of it was that we were able to resolve it in line with no interruptions. And actually, I was really glad that we did, because it meant that my data engineering team were really properly hands-on and taking responsibility and ownership for the implementation of some of the pipelines themselves.
Excellent. Any thoughts from you, Tomasz, there? Anything else that you'd think about?
Well, yeah, maybe I believe that we were slightly a bit too optimistic on the migration part, but we had a good buffer on the platform part. Maybe this is a little bit connected for what Vincent said. We've found a few things. As I mentioned, we didn't do a lift and shift. We did a recreation of the workloads. And this was slightly more complicated, especially when you need to rewrite something to code from those node code pipelines that we just developed manually. But the buffer that we had on the platform development part covered it, and we were able to finish at the deadline. So
excellent.
It was a challenge, but not a problem at the end.
A challenge, but not a problem. That's what you like to hear. Great. And a few questions that have come through as well have been around technology choices. So general open question, which is around, how did you decide to make your decision that Databricks was the right platform versus all the other technology that you kind of had out there in front of you?
Right. So that was the one that caused a lot of hand wringing internally before we actually started into it, because we did genuinely consider going back to signups. All right. I was so frustrated with the problems we were having. When we sat down with Xebia to really run this through with them to say, well, where do we go? There was a lot of challenging and questioning from the data engineering team and from the CTO for the data services side at Xebia. And one of the key questions was, do you want an environment that has got a degree of familiarity for your data engineering team? All right. And the general consensus and the unanimous decision on that was, yes, we wanted something that we could move to an end state that had a degree of familiarity with our current operations from a data engineering environment, where we could engage with something that felt familiar, but also that would enable us to embrace a whole load of new, disruptive, innovative technologies, because we've got a very strong goal around AI, not only from an AI and an ML perspective, but also from an agentic perspective. So it was, how do I, really engage with a new technology roadmap with the confidence that I can recognize what I'm doing. There's a degree of familiarity and it's not a huge disruption. So that was very much the key driver. And that was a lot of handholding and education from Xebia to ourselves. All right. So that's the key reason why we went to the Databricks. It felt familiar, it felt reasonable, and also I could see the future from the point of view of the technology roadmap.
Excellent. I think maybe a good follow-on question from there is, now that you've gone through this initial phase and you've gone through this program of change, how are you changing your roadmap based on the work that you've been through?
Well, so to a certain extent, I'm reevaluating some elements of my roadmap to say, right, now that I've got a stable platform, what can I start to prioritize that I had kind of pushed down the road because I was having interruptions to my roadmap? So I'm now accelerating some of the ingestion of new data sources. My data engineering team have actually started engaging with some of the AI teams and expertise at both Xebia and Databricks to actually start engaging with those models to see how can we more quickly start to implement and deploy, etc., some AI models across the data to build new analytical models, new use cases, etc., from the data. So rather than me looking at how my roadmap was 2 months ago, I'm now having to look at a new art of the possible and reprioritize some of the activities. But what I'm saying is that I'm now looking at what was my roadmap 5 years, 3 years down the road, and I'm bringing some of that in now. So it's more of an acceleration and a reprioritization because of the art of the possible and what we can now do collectively as a development team, as a data engineering team, and a data science team. I've brought all of those three together in an accelerated innovation environment.
Excellent. Really amazing to hear. Thanks, Vincent. Maybe a question both for Vincent and Tomasz. We have people on this call who are from maybe companies that have hundreds of data engineers, people who have maybe just them sitting there. What was the size of the team that was working on this migration?
Tomasz, I'll leave that to you.
Okay. Okay. So on Xebia's side, 4 people, but not fully assigned. So I was it's 4 people, but if you look at the assignment, it was half of the FTE of mines plus 1 data engineer plus 0.5 of the platform engineer. So we're talking about 2 FTEs plus, I believe, around 0.2 to 0.25 of a project management, our project manager. So let's say around 2 FTEs for those full 2 months. On the red flag side, lots of people involved, but Vincent, you would have to say what was the percentage of the time. 2 data engineers and people on the cloud and DevOps side that were not fully engaged through all the project, just available for us when this was needed. So
yeah, so Tomasz is absolutely right. as part of our daily stand-ups, we were able to identify what tasks had to be allocated to my team in a real-time environment. And as Tomasz said, that involved my cloud ops team, my engineers, my infrastructure, my security. It was variable, but it was almost de minimis in terms of the footprint of my organization. It was all around fast, quick turnaround. But I think that one of the important parts that made this possible was we made the decision to do this before we actually started to incur more technical debt. I think the timing was critical. When we looked at it, we could have deferred the project, but that would have incurred more technical debt. We made it at the point in time where the project, to a degree, had a certain level of elegance to it. It was sizable, it was manageable, and it was deliverable because we were no longer prepared to incur any more technical debt.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I think we are 1 minute close to the end of the hour, so I think we can leave it there. There were a few questions in the Q&A that we'll follow up on over email afterwards, and the recording for this will be sent out in about a week's time from Xebia. So I just want to finish by saying thank you so much to Vincent and Tomasz for sharing their story with us here. An incredible journey, a lean, mean team of just making stuff happen and full accountability. So thanks so much, Vincent and Tomasz.